prendere parte quest'oggi.
Earlier this week at the Vatican, Pope Francis gave his annual State of the World address to diplomats from across the globe. It's an opportunity for the Pope to speak directly to government officials representing 87 nations.
In the end, a comprehensive commitment on the part of the international community is necessary so that the entire world population can have equal access to essential medical care and vaccines.
Listening carefully are all ambassadors to the Holy See, who will present the Pope's concerns, his priorities and message to their country's governments. But why do countries have ambassadors to the Holy See? Well, to find out, you don't have to look far, as dotted all around the Vatican you'll see an array of flags and bronze plates marking the various embassies to the Holy See. Ambassador Christopher Trott represents Her Majesty the Queen and the United Kingdom to the Holy See. Why do countries have embassies to the Holy See?
There's a sort of combination of reasons, really. The first and most obvious one is that the Holy See is a state and is a member of the United Nations and is recognised as a member of the family of nations. And between nations you have ambassadors and you have embassies.
Although the Vatican is geographically a small nation, its huge following and enormous network is something that is very appealing to other nations. Ambassador Chiara Porro represents the nation of Australia.
The Holy See is quite unique. I mean, it's obviously one of the smallest states, the smallest state in the world, but it has an incredible international network made up, of course, by the 1.3 billion followers of the Catholic Church, but also in varying degrees through things like the Catholic schooling system, social services, Catholic hospitals. So as an ambassador, it's an incredible opportunity to be able to utilise this network, both to communicate and advance Australia's objectives internationally, but also to obtain information.
Another draw for nations to be connected with the Vatican is that it has papal nuncios, bishops and missionaries in many parts of the world that some countries find it difficult or even impossible to have a presence in. The Vatican has a presence and therefore eyes and ears in almost every corner of the globe, and some of the information it has can be very valuable to other countries, but it isn't easy to obtain. Ambassador Derek Hannon represents the Republic of Ireland. The Vatican, as we know, is famously very secretive and it can move very slowly. So does that make your job quite challenging sometimes?
It doesn't follow the same pattern template as most governments, for example. And as you mentioned yourself, Colm, I was posted in the States and in DC they practically hand you information on a plate. Here you really have to work for it, you have to ferret around for it. The culture here, I suppose, is one of discretion and flying below the radar. So they're inclined to be tight-lipped until they know you very well, which is usually the time you're ready to go. So that's a challenge.
Another reason countries have embassies and ambassadors to the Holy See, recognising there are over 1.3 billion Catholics in the world, is so that they might be able to, in some way, influence the Pope and the Church's stance on certain geopolitical issues and world events.
The voice of the Vatican, in other words, the Pope himself, carries an awful lot of weight, and faith leaders also speak more directly to individual people than politicians can, and they speak to their hearts instead of just their heads, or speak to both in a way that politicians perhaps can't do.
Can it be a tricky position sometimes when, in some cases, the Vatican stands on certain issues and your government stance can be sometimes completely opposed? Is that a delicate balancing act because you're in the middle?
I think you find as a diplomat, that's always the case. Each country has their own interests, and the same you could say of the Holy See, and so it's about finding ways to work together.
That's the sort of core part of a diplomat's job is to try and bridge those differences, or at least to try and explain why those differences exist.
I consider it essential that the European Union arrive at internal cohesion in handling migration movements, just as it did in dealing with the effects of the pandemic.
We hear so much today that the Catholic Church is becoming irrelevant, but yet then again we see countries like Switzerland opening up a brand new embassy to the Holy See. So how do you see the diplomatic role between nations and the Vatican? Is it something that's becoming more important? Is it becoming less important?
Well, I don't think it's becoming less important. I mean, if you look any week at the number of people who call to see the Pope, you know, recently we've had President Macron, we've had former Chancellor Merkel, we've had, of course, President Joe Biden. They're calling to the Holy See because the Holy Father is seen as a statesman, as somebody who doesn't have a particular agenda that he's pushing. It's not a political or economic or social agenda. They see him as an honest broker.
I renew my blessing and offer my heartfelt good wishes for a year of serenity and peace. Thank you.
In Rome, Colm Flynn, EWTN News in Depth.